The sun was just beginning to break through the fog as the sleek black car rolled into the gravel driveway, its tires crunching softly beneath it. The engine purred to a stop, and from behind tinted glass stepped a man who looked like he belonged in a Manhattan boardroom, not on a dusty farm road in the middle of nowhere. Dressed in a tailored navy suit, his watch alone could have paid for the land stretching out in all directions. His name was Ryan Caldwell, 29, ruthless in business, and already worth more than most men would earn in 5 lifetimes. But today he wasn't here to sign a deal. He was here for something he didn't fully understand yet. The air smelled of earth and old wood, the kind of scent that clings to childhood and forgotten memories. A wind passed through the tall cornstalks, and Ryan caught sight of something fluttering on the porch, an old red scarf tied to the banister. Frayed, sun-faded, but oddly out of place, like a whisper from a life lived slower and deeper. He paused, staring at it longer than he meant to. It reminded him of something, or someone. Inside the farmhouse, someone watched him through the screen door. She didn't move, just stood there, silent and still, her gaze fixed on him like she was reading pages he hadn't written yet. Her name was May, the farmer's daughter, though she'd never call herself that. Not anymore. When they met years ago, he barely noticed her. Just a quiet girl in muddy boots and a braid down her back, more interested in feeding calves than speaking to anyone. But now, something about her was different. Still, there was pain in her eyes, a kind of gaze that held history and heartbreak, the kind of gaze that made you wonder what it cost her to stay silent. There used to be a tree at the back of the property, an old willow that held their names carved into the bark. He didn't know if it was still standing, but something told him May did. Somewhere in her hands, she held the past like it was something fragile, something broken and mended too many times. As she stepped out into the morning light, Ryan's breath caught. Not because of how she looked, but because of what she carried. Camera. The same one he'd given her the day he left. He never thought she'd kept it. He never thought she'd use it to tell her version of the story. They stood in silence, just feet apart, with years of unspoken words suspended in the air between them. Sometimes it's not who left that matters. It's who stayed. And why? What if the girl you once ignored became the woman who could destroy everything you thought you knew? Let that sit with you. The camera in her hands wasn't just a piece of plastic and glass. It was a memory, a weight. Ryan had given it to her 5 summers ago, on the last day he visited this place. Back then, she was still that barefoot girl with dirt under her nails and stars in her eyes. He told her to use it to capture the real stuff. Moments, not poses. She had nodded quietly, clutching it like it was something sacred. But he left the next morning without a goodbye. She never saw him again. Until now. May lifted the camera slightly, not to take a photo, but almost like a shield. The strap was frayed, the body scuffed, but the lens clean, sharp, just like her memories. Ryan noticed the tremble in her fingers, just for a second. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. He looked around, unsure of where to place his hands, unsure of who he even was here. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy, carried years, choices, regrets. He wanted to speak, but his voice felt too loud for a place like this. Across the field, the barn door creaked open in the wind. Dust swirled in the light, catching the morning sun like gold flakes dancing in slow motion. Ryan remembered being 12, helping May's father fix that very door. He had stayed here for 1 summer after his mother's death, sent off by a father who didn't know how to deal with grief, or a son. May had found him crying behind that barn once. She didn't speak, just sat next to him and handed him a small paper airplane she'd made from an old receipt. "For when you want to fly away without really leaving," she had said. He didn't understand it then. He wasn't sure he fully understood it now. He glanced at her again. There was something about her stillness that unnerved him. She was no longer the girl who looked down when spoken to. Her eyes met his directly, calmly. But there was a storm beneath that calm, he could feel it. Inside the house, an old radio crackled to life. A country song drifted through the open window, soft and sad. Like a memory you don't want but can't quite let go of. It was a song they used to dance to in the kitchen, barefoot on the cold tile floor, laughing over nothing. He remembered her laughing. That laugh was gone now. Ryan's jaw tightened. For the first time in years, he felt small. Like he had stepped into a version of life that had gone on without him, and maybe had done just fine. Maybe even better. May looked down at the camera, then up at him again. Sometimes the past doesn't knock. It just shows up, wearing the face of someone you thought you'd forgotten. And sometimes the hardest thing to face is the truth someone else already learned to live with. The silence cracked when Ryan finally stepped forward. Just one step, but it felt like crossing a line neither of them had agreed on. May didn't flinch, but her fingers curled tighter around the camera. He could tell she didn't trust him. Not with words, not with presence. And honestly, he wasn't sure he trusted himself either. "I thought you left for good," she said softly, eyes fixed somewhere beyond him. Like she was speaking to the version of him that used to sit beside her on the porch, sipping sweet tea, pretending not to be broken. Her voice wasn't angry, just tired, like someone who had carried too much for too long. "I thought I had to," he answered. The words sounded like a lie even to him. He glanced toward the willow tree in the distance, barely visible over the rise of the hill. Still standing, barely, its branches hanging low like it, too, had grown weary of waiting. That was where he kissed her for the first time. That was also the day he decided he wouldn't stay. There had always been two Ryans. The one who craved simplicity, warmth, and belonging, and the one trained to chase power, to make things happen, to never look back. He hated how familiar this place still felt. Like part of him had been buried here and never left. May turned and started walking, and he followed. The path to the barn was the same, but everything else had changed. The paint peeled in long strips, the grass grew tall and wild, the door still creaked. Time hadn't been kind, but it had been honest. Inside, dust floated through cracked beams of sunlight, settling on old tools and forgotten buckets. In the corner, an old photo still hung, May's parents on their wedding day. Her father had passed 2 winters ago, and Ryan hadn't even known. That photo, yellowing and warped, was the only thing still perfectly in place. "I always thought you were coming back," she whispered. Every truck that pulled into the driveway, every letter the mailman brought. "Stupid. Huh." He didn't answer. He couldn't. She turned to him suddenly, eyes shining. "You left, but I stayed. And not just here. I stayed me. While you ran off trying to become someone the world would notice, I stayed here trying not to disappear." Ryan swallowed hard. Her words stung because they were true. He didn't leave because he had to. He left because he didn't know how to stay. Outside, clouds gathered. The wind picked up. A storm was coming, not just in the sky, but in the air between them. In May, he saw everything he had lost touch with: rawness, truth, resilience. And maybe that's what scared him most. Because when you see yourself in someone else, you also see what you've done. And what you've broken. Not every story is about who we become. Sometimes it's about who we abandon to get there. Rain began to fall as if the sky could no longer hold back what it had been carrying. Slow at first, then steady, sharp droplets tapping against the tin roof of the barn like a ticking clock. Ryan stood in the dim light, watching May as she walked across the room, her boots echoing on the old wooden floor. Every movement she made seemed deliberate, like she was trying to hold herself together one breath at a time. "You don't get to just show up," she said, not looking at him. "You don't get to walk in with your expensive shoes and your clean hands and act like this place still belongs to you." "I never said it did," he murmured. His voice cracked, barely audible over the sound of the rain. "But you thought it, didn't you?" She turned now, and the pain on her face was sharp enough to cut through the years between them. You thought I'd be here, frozen in time, still that girl waiting on the porch. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, her eyes glassy but fierce. I buried my father alone. I fought to keep this land when the bank came knocking. I stayed up nights wondering if I was enough. For this place. For myself. For anyone. Ryan looked down, ashamed. The water on his face now wasn't just rain. I thought leaving would make me stronger, he said, his voice hollow. I thought I had to be someone else before I could come back. You left before you even tried, she replied. And that's what I can't forget. The storm outside grew louder, lightning flashing behind the barn's open doorway. It lit up their faces for a moment. Two people standing on opposite ends of the same memory. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Slowly, she unwrapped it. A paper airplane, delicate and torn at the edge. The same one she had given him all those years ago. I found it, she said, almost to herself. In the box where I kept everything I shouldn't have kept. Ryan stepped closer, almost without thinking. His fingers brushed the edge of the plane, and time folded in on itself. I used to think love meant someone would stay, she whispered. Now I wonder if it's just about who's willing to return, really return. Not just show up. That line hit like thunder. It was more than a question. It was a dare. And maybe forgiveness was too far. Maybe it wasn't even what she wanted. But in that moment, what hung in the air wasn't hate. It was something more dangerous. Hope. Hope that hurts before it heals. Hope that makes you ache. And still, she hadn't told him to leave. Not yet. The silence after her words stretched longer than either of them could bear, filled only by the storm's breathing. Wind hissing through the cracks. Rain pouring like it meant to cleanse the earth. Ryan stood there, soaked to the bone, heart thudding like it was trying to break through his chest. He opened his mouth to speak, but May cut him off with a single step back, her fingers tightening around the paper airplane. There's something else, she said. You should know before you try to rewrite the ending. Ryan's breath caught. Her voice had changed, lower, steadier, like she was bracing for impact. She reached behind an old hay bale and pulled out a small wooden box, the kind used to hold letters or old tools. She set it down between them. Your mother's last letter. She sent it here. To me. He blinked, stunned. What? She knew you wouldn't read it if she mailed it to you directly. So she sent it here weeks before she passed. I was going to give it to you, but you left. And after that, I didn't know if you deserved it. His stomach twisted. His mother, the one person whose loss had split his world in two. All this time, something of her had been here waiting, like May had, like the land had. May slid the box toward him. Read it, or don't. But don't pretend you came back for answers if you're too scared to face them. His hands trembled as he lifted the lid. Inside, tucked neatly among the dust and quiet, was the letter. Still sealed, still holding words frozen in time. As he stared at it, the paper airplane in her hand suddenly meant something different. It wasn't just about escape anymore. It was a message, a warning, a map leading back to a place he'd been too proud to return to. I gave you that plane so you could fly without running, she said, voice cracking now. But you used it to disappear, just like your father did, just like you swore you never would. Ryan looked up, tears streaking down his rain-washed face. May, I didn't know. No, she said, stepping back again. That's the thing, Ryan. You never knew, because you never asked. You just assumed people would wait while you figured yourself out. Thunder rumbled deep and low, and in its echo, the barn door blew open wide. Rain poured in now, soaking the wood, the photo on the wall, the box between them. The letter sat in his hands like a second chance he wasn't sure he deserved. And May? She had finally let go of hoping he'd read it. But she hadn't let go of what it said. Not yet. Ryan stood frozen in the doorway of the barn, rain soaking through his shirt. The letter clutched like it might vanish if he let go. He wanted to open it. He wanted to not open it. His fingers trembled, and for a second, he saw himself at 15 again, knees pulled to his chest, crying behind the willow tree, wishing someone would just stay. May turned away, as if she couldn't bear to see whether he'd face it or run again. But before she stepped outside, he spoke, barely louder than the rain. She called me her little storm. May stopped. Slowly, she turned. That's what she always said, that I was lightning before I learned how to be quiet. I never understood it until after she was gone. His voice cracked. Maybe I thought if I stayed away, I wouldn't destroy anything else. He opened the letter with shaking hands. The ink had faded a little, but her handwriting hit him like a voice in the room. As he read, the rain around him seemed to fade, like the world was holding its breath. If you're reading this, you're standing in the place where you once learned how to breathe again. I hope you remember that. I hope you remember her. She's stronger than you, Ryan, and she knows how to love without leaving. Learn from that. Don't run from the good things just because you're afraid they might break. He folded the letter slowly, pressing it to his chest. May looked at him, her face unreadable. So what now? He walked toward her, rain streaming down his face like tears he no longer tried to hide. Then, with careful hands, he held out the paper airplane. Softened by time, edges curled. You were right. It wasn't for escape. It was a reminder that I already had everything I needed to land. I just didn't know how. She stared at it, her lips trembling. Then, for the first time in years, she smiled. Not the kind you pose for, but the kind that aches behind your ribs. That's when he knew he wasn't just visiting the past. He was finally home. The rain slowed. A beam of sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling across the field like gold. And there, behind them, the old willow tree stood, battered, bent, but still rooted. Ryan looked at May, eyes soft. I thought I came back to see what I left behind. But I didn't. I came back to become who I was supposed to be all along. And just like that, the story circled back. The gravel crunched under his feet as he walked beside her toward the porch, where she stood the first time he saw her again, holding the camera like it was a truth she never stopped telling. Sometimes, the ones we thought we left behind were the only ones who ever really saw us. And sometimes, the hardest place to return is the one that never stopped calling your name. The porch creaked beneath their steps like it remembered them. Ryan sat first, gently, like he didn't want to disturb the moment. May followed, setting the camera between them on the wooden rail. Neither spoke for a long while. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered. Wet earth, a hush in the trees, the distant drip of rain from the barn roof. The paper airplane rested in her lap, delicate and worn, its shape now softer than memory. She looked at it for a long time before folding it one last time, tighter, firmer, more sure. Then she held it up to the breeze. For a heartbeat, it hovered in her hand, and then she let it go. It soared briefly, catching the golden air, then dipped and settled in the grass. Ryan watched it fall with a half-smile. Funny, he said quietly. All this time, I thought I had to choose between flying or staying grounded. Turns out, maybe I just needed to learn how to land. May looked at him, not with anger or forgiveness, but with a gaze that saw everything. Some people never learn. You still can. The words weren't a promise, but they were a beginning. Inside the house, the radio crackled to life again, this time a different song. Slower, older, the kind of song that plays when you're washing dishes barefoot or sitting in the dark after a long day, thinking about the people who shaped you and the ones you let down. Ryan turned to her. I never asked, why did you keep the letter? Why not just throw it away? May's eyes softened, far off. Because it wasn't mine to throw away. Some things wait for us, even when we don't deserve it. They sat in silence after that. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for words. Birds returned to the trees, cautious but present. The wind moved through the tall grass like it was remembering something. 2. The camera between them caught a soft click as the wind brushed its shutter. Ryan didn't reach for it. Neither did she. Some moments don't need to be captured. They just need to be felt. In the fading light, the barn stood behind them, weathered but strong. The house, still warm from years of holding on. The willow tree, casting long shadows across the yard like old stories stretching into tomorrow. Sometimes, love doesn't sound like fireworks. Sometimes, it sounds like quiet footsteps on a porch you thought you'd never see again. And sometimes, the ending we feared was really just the place where we finally begin. So what would you do if the one person you left behind still waited, not for you to return, but to remember who you were? Let us know.